Shoot. Do I need the extra light? Nah, this is pretty lit. I have them as backups.
Hi.
Hey, at
Yeah.
last we meet after all these years. And you have an AI note taker?
Yeah,
I
I
have
do.
Loom, but I typically do not, unfortunately, usually admit that because it records a separate video and I need the Zoom because it makes
No,
it
that's
easier
fine.
to upload.
Yeah, you can actually do this. I don't, if you want to remove this AI note taker, that's fine. It just
Okay,
adds and it's a, yeah.
I will. I don't mind AI note takers, but what's the word? They have a time and a place. And
Okay.
besides, I'll give you the transcript afterwards as well as the recording and let you know when it's going to go up on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Yeah.
So it is nice to finally meet you.
Mm.
And
Likewise,
yeah,
yeah.
after all these years.
And
So now that, let's see, is my record's going? All right.
yeah.
All right, everyone. Welcome today to the Autism Experience podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin. And today on Zoom, we have Miss Ambreen, who comes to us all the way from home in Saudi Arabia on the show. We're gonna talk a little bit about her life story, how she ended up where she is, and then we're gonna have a psychological discussion because if you want to know a little bit about her, I'll do the intro and then she'll take over. Ambreen is host of the Psychology Talks podcast, which can be found as a live stream on LinkedIn. I'll let you take over from here and tell the growing audience what you guys discuss on that.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here on your podcast, and I've seen you grow over the LinkedIn on during all those years. So it's really nice that the way you build your personal brand, the way you put in a lot of effort in building this. So first of all, congratulations on all those achievements that you have achieved during these all past years.
Yes,
So
and I
yeah.
know that we had early interaction. We had some early interactions, and there were some possibilities. But one thing at that time, it's not that I wasn't uncomfortable or willing to do it. It's that I needed more time to drill down on everything and get to the point where I am, where I can approach somebody and say, "Hey, what's your availability like this month?" Like I did with you. I have these dates and days and times available. I'm available after so and so. So let's coordinate. Especially being
Absolutely.
as you're in the center of the globe, and this is a much different time zone for our guests
Yeah.
because if I remember correctly, somebody's at at the early stage of her evening over there.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, it's almost 9. It's yeah, we're almost finishing the day. So yeah, it's
Yeah. And thank you for recognizing that because a lot of the time with very large creators, not everybody recognizes that or acknowledges that the way that you just did.
thank
So,
you. Yeah.
first, we're going to start. Basically, format works like this. Instead of me asking a bunch of questions that I pre-prepared, I come prepared with four to five simple questions. First question is, who do you help professionally?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Basically, as you know, that I'm a psychologist, and my profession is marketing research consultancy. So I help companies to understand their consumer psychology. So I conduct large scale researches for companies to find out that what the consumer think about their brands. And based on the research, I advise them that how they can devise and how can they design their marketing campaigns, marketing strategies, any other like advertising, and how they can build their brand accordingly. So that's my major professional work.
All right. Who in the world or in your life do you want to be helping? Now we're going into your Psychology Talks
Yes,
podcast.
yeah, that's my passion actually because I'm a psychologist. So I like to share knowledge about mental health and about psychology because that's my passion. I love to help people, those who, especially who are having difficult times in their lives. So I feel that, when I share my content on social media, that help them in their lives. And there are lots of people who actually approach me and they told me that how their lives change only just like going through my content. And sometimes when they are really, really desperate, sometimes they help me or they contact me. So I help them, counsel them. But of course, I don't provide counseling on a professional basis. So it's just
Well,
sometimes once
because
off
then
and
you'd have to
advice. Yeah.
have certain credentials to be able to, you'd have to have whatever the equivalent of US credentials in mental health are all the way out there in
Uh,
Saudi Arabia just to be
Not
able to.
necessarily, yeah,
It's
because I'm a
different.
psychologist. I'm a psychologist and I can provide, but I choose not to do the professional because my professional work is mostly marketing side and research.
And
So yeah,
I can completely understand that because if you had to, I'm sure if you listen to most people, especially where you are, because they're coming from what we would consider, just like in your case, much poorer countries to what is what looks like a much more stable country in the middle of the world. Now,
not necessarily, but Saudi Arabia is one of the richest countries. So yeah, this is
well, this you
yeah,
and I both know because if I'm correct, you are Muslim, correct?
yeah,
I'm from the
absolutely.
Jewish faith. So I think we both have understandings of mental health kind of a little differently. Interestingly enough, what I would like to know first is what brought you to Saudi Arabia and what country are you originally from since you
Yeah.
immigrated?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm basically from Pakistan, and when my husband moved to Saudi Arabia, I had to move along with him. So that is what one thing that, and it's been like more than 15 years now living in Saudi Arabia. So it's like a second home.
Oh, I'm sure. Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia is a very rich country, and I'm sure at the time you and him both moved, this was probably where most of the professional and job and work opportunities were in that area of the globe, correct?
absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
If you don't mind me asking, since you are originally from there, is Pakistan, is it difficult for the parliament to create jobs in Pakistan that support people? Because I do know, especially in the Middle East, that many Pakistanis, if they're not immigrating to Saudi Arabia, they either come here to the States in this section of the globe, or if their family lives in the United Kingdom, they'll go to England.
Yeah, I mean, there's like you find them like especially like India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, these subcontinental countries are basically um like all the other countries like or developed nations provide them better opportunities because like these nations are very talented nations, but unfortunately there are not much opportunities in terms of like economic progression or career progression. So that's why a lot of people move out and to these countries. So yeah,
Okay, so they move effectively because the jobs and the stability and their families are going to typically be in those countries. Because there's an
absolutely.
example I'm about to use. One of my
Yeah.
earliest guests, who
Hmm.
happens to be from the Dominican Republic, LV, she lives in Spain. She lived in Spain and then she's been here in the States for the last, I forgot exactly how many years, but she's also married with children. However, generally, when coming from the Dominican Republic, most Dominicans actually immigrate to my state, which is New York, because most of their families who lived in Santo Domingo see Santo Domingo similar to like New York City or Miami. So they'll concentrate between those two particular cities in the United States or wherever their families went.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of people. There's a lots of like migration happening from different countries to different places. Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's also very interesting being as you're in Saudi Arabia when you say it's a rich country, because also one thing I remember correctly is this is an OPEC country, which is one of the things that really made this whole entire region, besides Saudi Arabia, very wealthy, was oil. But some of these countries, unfortunately, from what I've seen, even if we were to have a whole psychological discussion, some of their governments seem to put more of the country's investment into petroleum And when I look within the region, you have countries like the United Arab Emirates who diversified. They tried to go out of oil and gas and into other things like hospitality, real estate, and healthcare. And then you have a country like Qatar, which does what Saudi Arabia does, which is going on oil and gas.
Yeah, but actually, all these countries are diversifying their economy, especially Saudi Arabia is also diversifying on economy. So, like, yeah,
So,
it's
what
changing. It's
industries are
changing
Saudi Arabia now diversifying into?
in lots of industries, like hospitality, you said, and healthcare, education, name it. All of the industries, I would say.
Now,
Sports and entertainment.
since
Yeah.
you're passionate about mental health on your podcast, I'm also passionate about mental health. And I was always curious on something. How do people on the autism spectrum get seen in the Arab Muslim world in your region of the country? Because my experiences in this country as an adult on the autism spectrum has actually not necessarily always been positive.
Mm. It's now the awareness is it is required to be create more awareness about autism and all these neurodiversities. It still is a low. A lot of people don't know here about much about these kind of possibilities that what is neurodiversity. So a lot of people don't even know about it. So we need to create more awareness. And but there are lots of institutions that are providing these people some help and I think some job opportunities also. And like a lot of people are working on this, but it's very low at this moment.
Yeah, because the criticism I have with my country is more on, I would say at this stage, it's more on elected leadership. If we had, I would like to think if we had younger leaders, especially in my country, and we didn't have, are your parents baby boomers?
I, yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah, okay. And I think, like me, you're a millennial, correct? A little older than me.
Hmm.
So it's not a criticism of the baby boomers, but at least in the country you live in now versus my country, look at the difference in the elected leaders. The 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 crown prince is now running the country in Saudi Arabia, and Mohammed bin Salman, who's our age, is now running the country you live in. But, my country still, for whatever reason, thinks our parents' generation should be in charge of these decisions. And many of us, at least in this country, are saying, not necessarily, because now with our generation, the oldest of us is about 44 to 45. So that's about a stage where we could be making, policies that are more 21st century friendly, which, in your country, I've seen from when you and I were children. I've seen more of a modernization effort in your country, towards letting women go to college, get higher degrees. You've all been able to get into the workforce. Whereas in the 1990s, and I know you're well aware of this as I am, women in this region of the globe were not really necessarily allowed those opportunities.
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, this is still lots of like I can see that there's a lot of opportunities here, but yeah, it's like personally, I don't want to discuss all these like political and
We're not
economical
trying
side
to
because
discuss.
yeah,
We're
mostly it's
using
yeah.
politics just from
Uh,
when I go into modernization, what I'm really basically saying is, as you start to go younger, new ideas start coming up for people like yourself and people for me. That's
yeah,
all I was using the whole political angle
yeah,
for, was basically
yeah,
just to say you have a clash of ideas, especially
yeah,
in corporate America. And in your work, I'm sure there's one way of how can we position a product to actually, start making money, or how do we sell this product to newer generations?
yeah. There's always a different, and there is always different way to actually reach out to this. So yeah, there is lots of changes over the period of time. So, but yeah, we in this country we've seen a lots and lots of change and positive change at every front. So yeah.
Now, In terms of guidance for families on the autism spectrum who live in your area of the world, what would you say has changed in the last 10 to 15 years just in terms of understanding of abilities?
Yeah, there's so much there's so much respect has been created to all those who have been who have challenges and who are struggling to actually accommodate themselves in these kind of like education system, healthcare, or in any other system. So this has been like people are more accepting and welcoming to all those things. Yet there is a lot more work to be done, and there are a lot of people who are doing it. So yeah, we need to create more awareness also about it
Do you
and about
realize
all
you
this.
just said something that you just said the part out loud that I have been telling my mother and some people who are in our own age group for the last 10 to 15 years? Yes, things have changed. But if you really want to see people like myself, really get more successful in the age of artificial intelligence, don't you think we need to go to a new level of acceptance and opening up opportunities instead of lying to ourselves and saying, oh,
Yeah,
but things have gotten better for you? If they got better for me, then let's explain this. If things got better, why am I in entrepreneurship and why are the 9 to 5s that could have potentially hired me passed on me or didn't want to
yeah,
work with me? And I think that's a good question that, we could explore in a sense here in a little bit. When you look at LinkedIn, here's a good question. And you look at content, and a lot of it is recruiter and hiring manager content prone. And then I look at your content. Your content, I actually learned something from because it's deep. That was one of the reasons I respected your style from the beginning, because what you're doing instead of what everybody else does who's either career coach or a business coach is you're interviewing people who are within not only within your field, but are talking about important topics that we don't talk about. And actually, by the way, there's something I wouldn't want to tell you. Not only do you have one of the larger brands, but my earliest interest was your live stream podcast because the idea clicked in my head to basically say she's talking about things nobody else wants to talk about in a workplace or societal context. What if I do a podcast that's in essence not similar to you, but along the lines of, hey, let's talk about this?
yeah. That's what I really appreciate. As I told you that I've seen you, that the way you have built your brand is really important. And what I usually tell people that, sometimes they try really hard to get something done, like maybe in an employment or something, but they don't get it. But they need to understand that if they're not getting it, that means that universe has some really good plans for them. Like maybe if you are in entrepreneurship, maybe this is where your potential are, and that's how you can grow. And the way you're doing it, it's really you're doing something that really noble cause where like nobody else is doing. You're trying to create awareness about that. Okay, people like you can do those things which no one else can believe, and you can create a community of the people like you that that who are suffering, who think that they cannot have any potential, they cannot have any opportunity, but you
That's
create your own opportunity. That's what I really appreciate about you. Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, when you look at the way I comment on you versus most other people, I had one of the highest comments from a podcast guest all the way back in 2003, who was a founder, who was a co-founder. He worked at Tesla. This is Billy, all the way out in Los Angeles. And he said to me, you are one of the few people who is brash. When he goes on somebody's post, you disagree with them, but you do it in a very polite way that earns most people's respect, whether they're an author or not, because what you're basically doing is sort of being kind of like a bull in a china shop, but doing it in a very, very, very polite, grounded way. Like, for example, there are creators on this platform who are taking things like saying, talk to your parents on a daily basis and turning that into a tip. And I'm looking at it like, but this is common sense. we should be talking to our parents every day. Not everyone always has had good experiences, with their parents. My mother and father, like yours, are from, a generation where work was avidly available. I do talk to them weekly and daily, and with a lot of the job rejections right now, which are not psychologically great for somebody like me, I would agree with you on that the community builder, probably, as you say, it is a much more realistic path. The thing with being the community builder and the entrepreneur, this, I know this. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to monetize. And I'm actually I'm actually doing a service with my close friend in Canada, in Toronto, in Ontario, Canada. We're doing a partner accountability service because I thought he had a big following. Turns out he had about the same size following as me, and he's very selective. Now, from a psychological standpoint, because he and I were doing kind of like what you and I are doing here with my podcast, we both run podcasts, and yet we didn't have the size audiences. So we figured, after going to a real estate meetup called Save the Chat virtually for almost all of last year, we finally realized we can he came to me with a unique pitch. We're going to do a service together, and we're going to use it as a lead generation tool for both our podcasts. If it works, great, I can employ you. If not, worst comes to worst, I will definitely act as a referral for you or somebody who worked very closely with you. And, we can go about that way where I say, yes, he worked for me. We tried so and he's very good at doing X, Y, and Z. Because anyone who comes on this podcast with me sees that I have abilities that most corporate employers today are looking at, but your experience is all over the place. If my experience is all over the place, it's because your hiring systems are saying, here in America, we want you to have a clean path of growth in corporate America. But if I'm not going to have someone take a chance on me, then why don't you value entrepreneurship on a resume? Because it's not the same thing, but it's similar to, you know, it's similar to going through a degree program.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the systems are broken actually. Sometimes you need to, and they have like proper ways to hire something, and then they
Clap,
actually miss
because
out on some.
you know why I'm clapping? Because you say everything before I started my platform, you're basically saying everything I've said for a bunch of years. You're basically my clone in a sense, because I've said this: either the system is broken, it's still stuck in the 20th century.
Yeah,
My government is stuck in the 20th century, and basically, leaders from the 20th century are trying to work with artificial intelligence, which is a recipe for disaster.
yeah, absolutely.
And in
This
my
is, of
country, we
course,
had somebody who attempted to run for president who was a huge nonprofit attorney and, you know, and leader in a thought sense, Andrew Yang, who basically has been saying since 2020, we're going to need to explore the possibility of a UBI if artificial intelligence, which is the big elephant in the room, starts basically eliminating people. Now, I would refer you to something that I think you'll be interested in. You know who Alex Karp is, right?
actually no.
Alex Karp is one of the co-founders of a software company called Palantir. He's neurodiverse himself. He said there are going to be two kinds of people in the AI world who are probably going to survive and thrive. Anyone who's neurodiverse that can work with computers. So that means anyone like me with ADHD, autism, or whatever you consider neurodiverse, and people in the trades.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's what I heard, that, like, especially like, and these neurodiverse people are actually highly talented. It's just a matter of treating them well and helping them, like, or you utilizing their potential. So yeah, it's just a matter of guiding them right and channel their energy.
Right. And unfortunately, what we need in especially the corporate world is we need more leaders who are similar to Carp like that, that have said that, that can now be the bridge to work with people who are neurodiverse. Because if you're going to take the old ideas that you and I grew up with, which is you should really be worried about what your skills are in terms of your career prospects, then that's a very old, outdated way to look at somebody who's neurodiverse. Every neurodiverse person is different. I'm sure. Have you worked with neurodiverse people?
Um, to be honest, not really, but yeah, I've been part of the community where like a lot of people are neurodiverse and they do share their experience that how the world is different. And I've also like learned and studied about this, like the ADHD and autism and something. But yes, I haven't worked directly with them.
No, but you've been involved in the community, and that's a very
Yeah,
important thing because most of these people actually look to me as kind of a voice for them. That was one of
yeah,
the things I began noticing over the last 5 years of content posting
yeah,
was when I started to see people in my feed who were starting to tell their stories, it clicked. They must they must be viewing what I'm putting up. They must see my comments and they must see that now somebody is similar to them is finally doing what we've all wanted to do. Maybe we should
yes,
not necessarily follow the leader, but start doing what he did and seeing
yes,
where it goes.
yes, yes. That's what I just told you, that the way you have built up your brand, the way you are like bringing all these people together is really what matters. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. The only thing would be for somebody like me is how to quantify that and then explain that on a resume if I ever felt the need to. But the fact that I've been able to start some level of a movement like that has brought me into quality conversations with people like yourself. I mean, for my podcast, let's see, how many people have I had? You're somewhere in my 30th to 40th person. I lost count because while you would figure I wish I could produce more, in reality, you know, my time has been stuck between job search, adjust to job, work with job, book guests. So while I haven't maybe had as many guests as I would have liked to for the last couple years, every low episode that I've produced, even if it's one, two, or three episodes a month, have been quality because I don't have to sit there and plan out, spend all that time editing. I can just focus on two or three good episodes a month, mentally prep, and then just come sit down and do it like this. And then there's less editing because if you're doing what Stephen Bartlett does,
Yeah,
the podcaster who's much younger than us in the UK, you're
yeah,
pumping out a lot of episodes. So there's a lot more
yeah,
need for editing.
yeah, absolutely. Of course, Stephen Bartlett's podcasts are like one of my favorites, and
I
he
actually
of
love
course,
his podcast too. We have
yeah, yeah,
something in common because
yeah,
I'm now when I'm producing my podcast, which also is going to be, a bunch of several services that I'm in the process of launching to, now start bringing in some income. One of the services is podcast production and editing, which I need to get a little better with. I also am going to do what I call autism consulting and partner accountability. So these are the things that I've been spending most of my time with, as well as how to register as a business so that in the future, then I could become like a Stephen Bartlett.
yeah,
And he's
absolutely.
one of the people I look up to because the way he produces his podcast, he's had top psychologists. He's had people at the
Yeah,
top of their fields on his show who are much older than you and me, who I could actually respect. He had Scott Galloway, who's a professor of marketing at NYU, who I absolutely respect and like his, platform in books and his media ventures. And, he's had so many wonderful guests, but clearly he built his reputation brand, as you pointed out with me, in such a way that he can now get to that level of guests. And in few recordings, what I'm trying to do is get to him and Hala's level. I'm sure you've seen her content before, as well as her Yap podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
She, like you, is another one who I have a lot of wonderful respect for. The fact that I can pull off getting people like yourself to come on here probably shows most of LinkedIn something that they're missing in hiring. If he can rope in huge creators like you, for example, then why are we missing that he can't do X, Y, and Z in a corporate role? And like you said, it's because most people associate hiring for a role. I'm sure you've seen this in your work with what did you learn from that degree program?
yeah. I mean, it's all those degree programs are different, and it's uh, I would say there's like meant for the not the people who are neurotypical, but then again, they're missing out a lot of people who may not fit in. So that's one thing that
Well, that's what these
should
ATS
have.
softwares unfortunately are
Yeah,
designed to do, which is
yeah,
they pick the neurotypical, but they axe out the person like me who's neurodiverse, who, you know, would have his resume designed really nicely, really nicely well, but they're like looking at you, wait, why are you starting this business with this person? How is this a project if you're applying for a project management role, even though it's a growing thing? Oh, so you have these content creation skills, but it's not from a degree program. It's like, so even if I design my resume in the way that you would have liked it to as an ATS system, you're still going to basically go for whichever type of cookie cutter resume you want anyway.
yeah, yeah. That's very true. Yeah.
I mean, we can lie to ourselves, but one creator who I absolutely admire because he just brings it up every time is you're familiar with the Workday ATS system, correct?
Yeah, the AT system is like a completely different. Yeah.
That's like
The
designed for the business HR type of, certain
apps.
types of traditional organizations. But that ATS system, just from an applying in my perspective, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's such a mess, and it makes it easier to choose out the cookie cutter resume, versus the maybe he didn't have the traditional linear path. But can we really sit there today and say careers are linear anymore? Because they're really not.
Yeah. I mean, of course, they have their own agenda, and that's how they do it. And they need to so much work, so many people, and that's it. It's it's all working on their like how they work and how they need people. They have their in mind that what kind of culture they want, and that's it. So yeah, and they hire people like this only. They don't need any other type of people, and that's where a lot of things like they are missing out on. They are missing out on lots of talent in this regard because uh, they choose only those type of people who can only fit in their culture. But what they miss out is they may not
Oh my God, the
fit in the
culture fit.
culture, but yeah, this
The culture fit. Culture fit is just code for you, I know you know this, and I learned this over time, not just from your content. We want the culture fit is really code for we would prefer if we hire you if you don't say anything and you just be grateful for whatever opportunity that we hire you for, and please don't make any noise in the office.
Yeah, it depends. It depends at what kind of organization you're working with. Some companies really have a good cultures, but yeah, some are really toxic.
Of course, much
Yeah.
understandable, because what you and most people I feel on LinkedIn are referring to when you talk about toxic is you're looking at the 20th century where, you know, our parents were told you put up with certain things when you're at work because what's ultimately important is the paycheck. I mean, I just came across a post yesterday that reinforced things. No, I came across this on Instagram. Mike Mancusi, who's a comedian, actually posted about why millennials are unhappy, with work right now and listed the reasons. Oh, corporate doesn't pay the salaries that they once did. There's no benefits. They can barely survive. And I put down a comment that said, in my situation, money is about maybe 40 to 50% of this. In reality, you could pay me 150,000 a year, but if I don't like what I'm doing, the money's not really going to do anything other than allow me to have some level of a life, but I need time to do creative things like you, which is why we're doing this stuff because that's where I'm finding the satisfaction. It's not being a 9 to 5 worker. What I basically
Yeah.
went on and effectively said, as you could judge from that comment, is why aren't you finding yourself first in what you like to do? Because what you're basically just admitting is the money is your only negotiable in this sense. So if that's the sense, then that basically tells me you only live for work.
Yeah, yeah. And it shouldn't be the case only that, you need to live for what actually fulfills you and which can satisfy you as a person. Yeah.
It's something that I discussed with my mother, and she even said, at my age, some of us in the boomers generation are still looking for purpose that we could not find like you guys have when we were younger and those were the early years of the workforce. We were raised on we were raised by a generation who experienced the Great Depression, so the advice at that point was stable job, you got married, man and woman, you bought a house, you started a family. Okay. Now, from a mental health standpoint, this is no longer applicable in this century. In order for that, I would say we were lied to, but I would say we were sold one version of a reality that is no longer true.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a different thing that um, it depends on what exactly do you want. It's maybe the values change, but depends that exactly like maybe the entire value system is changing outside, but what do you think, first of all, matters the most? So,
And you bring up a good point because I think values is the biggest thing that we don't think about nowadays when we are looking at the type of a life we want. I, for example, have someone who I no longer talk to as of 2023. He's a manager of analytics. What he was taught by his father, and he's the same age as me, and then he married a much younger woman and is a parent right now, is you get yourself as high paying a job as possible, which allows you to live, but then he hasn't exactly had he effectively failed upwards, but he was basically telling me money was his only important value. My value for wanting to work is more a mission driven purpose. If a company's only mission, whether it's the Fortune 500 or retail or a nonprofit, for example, if you put me in a nonprofit where I can understand the mission like the Knowledge House, which is to help people who are in my situation of moderate income achieve, tech level work with better salaries, then you know, that's something that I could get happy about, working for that type of an organization, as it's similar to my podcast. My podcast carries a mission, and my biggest goal is to get this fully registered, whether it's in partnership as a media agency or do it on my own and then, have my own brand, but digitally so that I can hire people digitally because trying to run a business in person isn't really necessarily needed today. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
in the world of AI, I can hire somebody in your country. I can hire someone in the Philippines working in a different time zone to do X, Y, and Z while I'm sleeping.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a smart move that you know that you can do it. So yeah, definitely.
And I'm
Really,
being mentored by someone, another person from Canada, who even revealed to me when he was starting his media brand, that's exactly what he did. While he was working for years in the financial sector, between hedge funds, between private equity, between Wall Street, he basically said, you start a business, you you hire people who are overseas.
yeah.
They do different things for you. You do it fully remote, and then you register as a you allow it so that they're freelancers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very smart move these days because you don't have to do all the things on your own. You hire people who can do it for you, and then that's how you make money. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and it's even funny because when you have somebody as old as Robert Kiyosaki saying, when I was getting my start in real estate, you actually had to go person to person at networking events, whether you like them or not, and basically say, "Hey, I have this multifamily project.
Yeah,
Are you willing to inject the capital into this project so I can build it?" He admitted, if I was starting over today, I would rather start a business today in this economy and world that you guys benefit from now, that my generation built for you. Because if you started a business the old fashioned way, you basically had to go to people that you had to kiss up to. Now you can do it on a Zoom, or now you can raise capital and angel investing in such a way that you don't have to actually go in person anymore.
absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. This is everything. It's like the dynamics are changing. It's better to actually get benefit from this. Yes.
And that's the one thing that I think I enjoy also about platforms like LinkedIn in terms of social media is you can connect with people like what we're doing. That's how advanced technology is. And if you and I tried to do this back when we were younger, how much more expensive would it have been to be able to do this? You would have had to have a studio. You would have at least had to have probably 10 to 20,000. I don't I don't know what that is equivalent in your currency over there, but I'm sure it's similar where we would have had to have large studio budget,
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
people, and production just to pump and a camera and I'd still be going at snail's pace because, producing episodes was expensive unless you're doing it at a big studio.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you need to start taking action, the small action which lead to the big change. So whatever you want to do is just keep doing it consistently, small steps, and then yeah, it will lead to the big change.
Well, just like I did, where I basically started from, oh my God, how many in 2020, how many connections did I have? I must have had like 50 to 100 connections, and then I grew to 10K. I could have
Yeah,
gone further, but I said to myself, what am I really going to do with a million connections? If this was on YouTube, you're more than monetized at that point on
absolutely.
YouTube,
Yeah.
where there's
Yeah.
incentive to it. But 1 million on LinkedIn, sometimes I look
Yeah.
at
It
that,
doesn't.
I'm like, what do you have brand deals?
Yeah.
Are you actually monetized, or did you just go for that number because that's what everybody
Yeah.
else was doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the number of followers doesn't mean anything, to be honest, especially on LinkedIn. Nothing.
I mean,
And
what's your connection following at now?
yeah, it's like 100,000 plus. So, but it doesn't mean that, the
But see, for
following,
somebody like you who inspired me, that was well earned. But I think the difference with you is what you're doing is you're inspiring people like myself to do his own thing because of the way you did your content, where I've admitted I learned something from you. I'm not looking at another post where it's a it's a hack, it's a tip, it's advice that I actually can't put into work. But when I look at your posts, okay, cool. This is definitely someone who thinks like me. She's putting out something that is either actionable or there's a good lesson behind it. So we have 15 minutes left. I wanted to ask you a question. You did a series of posts where your son became an author just like you. What was his
yeah,
motivation to follow his mother?
yeah, because he talks about that how broken system is this education system, and he actually used to come to me and used to say that he doesn't like the school anymore, and and as a mother, like I used to think that, okay, that's like every kid nags about education system that it's not good and but then actually he started giving me some actual facts and see that, okay, this system is broken. And that's how I just said, okay, if he's doing something, he really is passionate about bringing change in the education
Is
system.
he
So
about
yeah,
10 now, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, he's 11 now,
He's
but he
11 now.
published his book, yeah, in
And
when he
I've
was 9.
definitely made that comment on several occasions to you where if he's 11 years old and he already sees a huge flaw in the educational system in your country, and that's no different over in my country, then that says something about how smart kids are nowadays growing up because
Absolutely, yes.
the book
There is a
he
gap.
wrote
Yeah,
was probably similar in style to you because he had an example to actually learn from who's directly in his own home. And he probably worked with you on how to word everything, that's smart. Because
yeah,
honestly, for an 11-year-old to be able to say, by the way, the country that I live in, the system is basically clustered and just not, why am I doing X, Y, or Z?
yeah. He doesn't only talk about just the one country, but he talks about
It's globally.
yeah, it's global. The education system is global, like the grading system, the way they actually try to fit in everyone in one box. It doesn't work for everyone. So that's what is his mission, that
Right,
he just wouldn't want to.
because the
Yeah,
problem is, I can say it to you, education is still stuck in the Industrial Revolution.
absolutely.
And who started the education system or who had the ideas for it? John David Rockefeller.
Absolutely. Yeah. So these are the
Basically,
ones, yeah. They have their own
basically,
agenda and mission. So, yeah.
well, unfortunately, Rockefeller's entire lineage has survived all the way into this century.
Mhm.
Whereas in
Yeah.
most rich families, what tends to happen? Generation one makes the money, but by two or three, the money basically goes kaput. Whereas, you know, probably by you, and then in some parts of the African continent, money has at least stayed in some family for generations where they were smart about it. Rockefeller came up with a very interesting way to preserve it, which is basically a video that I saw that was educational. Was, you know what the waterfall method is?
No,
The
sorry.
waterfall method is basically term life insurance policies. So
Mm,
basically, each generation gets a life insurance policy. They can do whatever they want with the money from it, spend it however they want. And then when they die, it goes back to the original trust and it boils down to the next generation. That's kind of how they did not go broke. Not to mention, Rockefeller left several philanthropic organizations to his name, as well as the sister oil companies that are all privatized. But basically, some families figure out how to keep the money going.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So,
But anyway, we've definitely had a fun conversation today, and I'm glad that you came by. I
yeah.
fully
Thank you.
100% appreciate this, and I enjoyed having you today. So
Mm.
I will leave you on these two questions. How do people reach out to you? What's your preferred social media platform?
Yeah, I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, so they can reach out to me on LinkedIn anytime. I'm also active on Insta these days, so they can also reach out to me on Insta.
I have seen some of your whatchamacallits. If anyone in your audience is, when I post this, is interested in contacting me for services, I can do a PowerPoint presentation and teach them about different levels of autism, even if they're here based in the United States, like myself. If they're looking for a partner, if they're looking for a partner accountability, they can DM me and my mentor Dan Freidenberg, and we can discuss a plan for what their goals are. And if they're interested in podcast production services or how to make content, your audience can feel free to reach out to me. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so I appreciate you coming by, and
Thank you.
since it's probably 9:50 in yours,
Mhm.
I'll let you go because it's the evening there and it's still early afternoon here. All right?
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It was really a very different and very insightful discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming out. All right?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good
Okay. Thank
evening.
you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.